Interpol joined other experts in the Ethiopian Airline crash investigation. Rescue efforts underway in Lagos after school building caves in. President Macron arrives in Kenya for historic visit. Good evening and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta live in Nairobi alongside my colleague Rama Nyang, who has our business headlines. Rama?
That's right, Richard. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Africa's largest telco, MTN, will list its Nigerian subsidiary somewhere between April and May. And the African Union reiterates its commitment to ensuring a continental free trade area is set up. We'll have the details of those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. Now let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
Thank you, Rama. The investigation into the Ethiopian Airlines plane crash continues as the international police agency Interpol joins other experts at the sit, and more relatives arrive with the hope of taking the bodies of their loved ones back home for burial. But as CGTN's reports, relatives of the victims are yet to get an assurance from the airline that this is in fact possible.
A family torn by grief, seeking any information they can to help understand how they can receive the remains of their loved ones.
We just came here. We've been assisted by both the government here and we're waiting for the embassies to come here.
Their relatives had both British and Kenyan citizenship.
British consul is coming at 3 o'clock, and already the Kenyan embassy is also here. And
at this point, however, Ethiopian Airlines is not giving any promises as to if and when they will receive the remains. In an attempt to salvage any little customer confidence it can, the chief executive officer of the airline has been visiting different terminals at the airport to personally offer assurance of safety to other travelers using the airline. Experts say this is an isolated case, and although it may scare away passengers from the airline for a while, the 73-year-old airline still commands the largest fleet and more routes than any other airline in the continent.
It will take sometime like 3 months, 4 months to come up with a preliminary report.
In total, 157 people died in the crash, including crew members. Memorial services are being planned by different denominations in the city to console the families of the people who were lost. CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Sad story there coming out of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. But for more on the story, we are joined by CGTN's Gerun Chala in Addis and Kelechi Makalam in Abuja. Thank you both for joining us. Again, sad story there, but my first question is to you, Gerun. How are the families handling the visit? Can you elaborate?
Well, it's been 2 days since these families from about 35 countries across the world have lost their lives. After the crash, 157 people died, including crew members, 8 of them, all of them Ethiopians, and 35 Kenyans and other nationalities at the same time. Today, we have seen them, almost all of them, on the ground. They went to the crash site. Ethiopian Airlines has invited a family from each of the deceased families, and they have accommodated them at the same time after sponsoring them to come here and see for themselves the crash site. The mourning simply is contagious emotionally. I can tell you that for sure, because some of them were expressing their sorrow through the pictures they have of loved ones. It could be a son, it could be a daughter, a wife, a sister. It was really, really emotional moment, but they had to do it. At the end of the day, they said they are happy that they have seen what really went wrong, what really happened, the impact of it. It was really sad and emotional, but they had to do it and it happened.
All right, thank you for that insight, Gerun. Let's move over to Kelechi in Abuja. Kelechi, Nigerian Airline Air Peace, which placed orders for 10 new Boeing 73 MAX 8s, says it's premature to decide on whether to cancel the purchase. What is the latest, and how is the government dealing with the announcement?
concerns here in Nigeria too about the functionality and safety of Boeing 737 MAX airplanes after Sunday's mishap especially. And the concerns are even heightened after reaction from the airline operator Airpeace saying it was premature to decide whether to cancel the orders which it had made for 10 of the aircraft. But in the meantime, the Nigerian government has placed a ban on Boeing 737 MAX from operating within Nigeria's airspace. It was the resolution reached today at the Federal Executive Council meeting chaired by President Muhammadu Buhari. Now, the decision was made after the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority issued an advisory that pending the determination of the cause of the Ethiopian Airline crash and the response of the manufacturer, therefore, thereafter, no operator would be allowed to fly within or outside Nigerian airspace, the aircraft, I mean.
All right, thanks for that, Kelechi. I want to get Jim Spellman, who's in Washington, D.C. I want to get him in on this conversation. Jim, airlines and governments around the world have grounded the Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft after it was involved in its second deadly crash in 5 months. What does this really mean for Boeing?
Look, we're learning more every day about safety concerns around these planes. The FAA received at least 18 complaints about the MAX 8 last year from pilots who said that aircraft can be difficult to control, and they've called the flight manual inadequate. But Boeing continues to say this aircraft is safe. So far, the FAA is going along with Boeing's assessment. There are growing calls here in the U.S. from lawmakers and others to ground these planes until it can be determined if they are indeed safe. We know the Boeing CEO spoke to President Trump Tuesday and urged him to not ground the fleet. Canada's decision, announced just within the last few hours to ground these planes in Canadian airspace, will increase the pressure on the U.S. to do the same. After that Lion Air crash last year, Boeing has been working on a software patch and new flight protocols that could make the plane safer. These have not yet been implemented. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the 5-week-long U.S. government shutdown may have slowed implementation of this software fix. Through this all, Boeing has lost billions of dollars in market share. Richard.
All right, Jim, thanks for that. We'll be coming right back to you for another question, Jim, so don't go away. But let's shift right back to Gerum. Gerum, talk us through the identification process. I know it must be difficult for the families. Give us an insight on how that is going.
Well, really, it's difficult to say at this moment in time when and how fast Ethiopian Airlines and its team of experts are going to come by with who was on the plane and which remaining belongs to who. It's a very complex process. Ethiopian Airlines, however, should follow an international procedure. As you know, whenever this kind of crash happens, there is an international procedure that airlines should follow in order to establish the identification of the deceased, or even the way of handling the black box itself has its own methodologies, principles, and ways of handling. So Ethiopian Airlines, for now, is saying that it has established a team of doctors and other experts, and also has international assistance in this regard to establish the identification of the deceased passengers. And for now, what they are doing is they have established the information center across the world in 35 states at least, and they are providing every information they are getting at every single minute. So for now, this is what we know. We are expecting as soon as possible the results will come, and families will be receiving them as we know.
Thank you, Gerum. And it's right back to you, Kelechi. Should we be concerned with Nigeria? They've had their history of plane crashes and accidents. When was the airline expecting delivery of the planes? And at what stage were the talks with Boeing?
Well, operators issued a statement earlier in an attempt to try to allay the fears of the public that it wouldn't take delivery of the aircraft until about 2020 or 2021, by which time it believes all issues pertaining to the aircraft would have been rectified. So, as it stands, a firm order for 10 Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft has been placed by the airline, and they're still in the design and configuration stages of the order. Richard?
Kelechi. And Jim, I guess you get the last question. And I guess the question we all would really like to know is, what do you think the airlines are going to do with their outstanding orders for the MAX 8 jet, and how is it going to affect Boeing?
Well, it's a good question. The 737 MAX 8 accounts for about a third of Boeing's revenue. It's extremely important to the company's bottom line now and in the future. By the end of last year, the company had made more than 350 of these planes, and there are more than 5,000 MAX series 737s on order. This will be a huge part of this company for decades to come if they can get past this crisis. There's some precedent here for how Boeing may emerge from these troubles. In its first year of service, the 787 Dreamliner suffered from a series of battery fires. Nobody was hurt in those incidents. The entire fleet of Dreamliners was grounded for about 3 months while a fix was put in place. That was back in 2013. It did not stop airlines from ordering those planes, so much of this will really depend on whether Boeing can convince the public this plane is safe. If Boeing can't do that, airlines may decide it's too risky to continue using this aircraft, and they could shift to Airbus or perhaps the new Chinese-made Comac C919, which is expected to come into service in the next couple of years. It feels increasingly, though, here in the U.S., like Boeing has to take some positive step to reassure the flying public that this plane is safe. Back to you.
All right, excellent reporting, Jim. I'd like to thank all our correspondents for their insights. Gerum Chala in Addis Ababa, Kelechi Mekalam in Abuja, and of course you, Jim Spellman in Washington, D.C. Moving on. More on the Ethiopian Airlines plane crash. Rescuers from a Chinese company based in Ethiopia have been helping with recovery efforts at the site. Ethiopia-based company dispatched 4 large diggers and 20 workers working continuously for almost 30 hours. Data and voice recorders have been recovered, but the operation remains complicated. Damage from impact was so severe that the salvage team is struggling to identify plane parts.
Over the next few days, the salvage team will finish clearing up debris from the Ethiopian Airlines crash. Assisted by a Chinese company, rescuers have unearthed the wreckage, which was destroyed beyond recognition. Plane parts are scattered over an area of 10,000 square meters.
The cockpit was buried deep in the ground. Due to the tremendous impact, all the parts of the plane were compacted together. After we dug everything out, what remained was this pit nearly 20 meters deep. We reached the deepest point. We were not able to retrieve any complete items, not even a complete seat. Everything was crushed together and smashed up. Not one item was in a state where we could identify it from its appearance.
Recovery of bodies is underway, and the investigation into the incident is gathering momentum. Ethiopian Flight 302 lost contact minutes after takeoff, crashing near the town of Bishoftu. Once the site has been cleared, the crater left behind will be filled in.
Because all the debris from the plane was mixed with dirt, it was very hard to excavate. So we discussed this with Ethiopian Airlines and decided to expand the debris field to an area much larger than where the debris was actually scattered. So once we cleared the surrounding earth, we discovered a relatively complete body of the plane in the middle. This way, it's easy for the recovery team to lift it out.
The future of Boeing's 737 MAX 8 remains in question. Several countries have banned the company's best-selling model. They include Singapore, the UK, and Germany. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Meanwhile, visiting French President Emmanuel Macron has met Ethiopian President Saleh Work Zewde and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. They discussed issues of cooperation between the two countries in areas of military, trade, and investment. President Macron has reiterated France's full support to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's efforts. CGTN's Gerum Chala has more.
French President Emmanuel Macron first met President Abiy Ahmed in the Ethiopian historic city of Lalibela. There, both have visited the Lalibela Rock-hewn Church. France had provided support for works of conservation to be done on this World Heritage Site. After returning to Addis and at the office of the Prime Minister, Abiy and Macron saw the signing of 4 agreements on military, trade and investment cooperation. based on the agreement on military cooperation, France will back Ethiopia to modernize its ground and air forces as well as re-establish its navy.
Due to the fragile security situation in our region, Ethiopia wants to build an even stronger defense force, and we especially want to work with the French government to build a strong air force and a strong navy in this country. President Macron and I have overseen the cooperation agreement between our two defense ministries in this regard. This can be taken as one of the boldest bilateral ties Ethiopia has with EU states.
Our agreement on military cooperation focuses on re-establishing and strengthening Ethiopia's navy, and also advances to strengthening the air and ground forces of the country. We will provide material and training assistance to deliver our promises. We give this great attention. The joint work between our two defense forces is vital. This is because we have a huge respect for Ethiopia's engagement in the region on peacekeeping and tackling terrorism.
On the political aspect of their relations, France Emmanuel Macron said him and his government are happy with Ethiopia's current journey to a democratic state. Macron has expressed his full support for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's leadership. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, on his part, has made an appeal for President Macron. Abiy asked looted African wealth now in European banks to be repatriated to the continent through the help of France and its administration. Later at night, President Macron has met Ethiopia's President Sadr Zewde and held talks on issues of mutual concern. France has granted Ethiopia 15 million euros for works of capacity building and gave 85 million euros as a concessional loan. Ethiopia and France have a long-standing historic relations, and currently the two strategic partners are cooperating in almost all sectors. Giant French companies are already investing in Ethiopia, especially on sectors like breweries. More investment is expected following the visit of President Emmanuel Macron to Ethiopia. Group CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And in other disturbing news, rescue efforts are underway in Lagos after the collapse of a 3-floor school building. The building was in the Itafaji area of Lagos. As many as 100 children and many others are feared to be trapped in the debris. Rescue workers have been searching for survivors at the side of the collapsed building. At least 8 children have been rescued so far. Nigeria is frequently hit by building collapses with weak enforcement of regulations and poor construction materials often being used. In 2016, more than 100 people were killed when a church came down in southeastern Nigeria. Well, for more on this, we are joined by CGTN's Deji Badmus in Lagos. Deji, thank you for taking time out. Thank you for joining us here on Africa Live. Deji, as many as 100 children and many others feared to be trapped after a building containing a primary school collapsed in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. What more can you tell us?
Well, Richard, what I can tell you at the moment is that rescue effort is still going on. At the moment, nobody can precisely tell you how many people were in that building at the time it came down. What we know is that it's a residential building that also has a private school. It's a private school, a primary and daycare center, and we do not know how many children were actually in the classroom, in the school now when the building came down. The authorities say they're still going to investigate that. But it's a terrible situation. This area of Lagos is a densely populated area. You have markets everywhere. The streets are very narrow. To get into that area is really difficult. In fact, it was very difficult for the emergency agencies now to be able to get in their earth-moving equipment into that area. That's the reason why, as you can see rescuers deploying crude method now. So the whole thing is, to be candid, somewhat chaotic. First responders, of course, are leading the rescue operation, and somehow they're succeeding in getting people out. But obviously, it's definitely going to take a long time because at the end of the day, there are evacuated from the building and they were alive.
All right, Deji Badmus, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you for your insight and analysis. We do appreciate your analysis. Moving on, President Macron arrives in Kenya for historic visit. Zimbabwe's largest referral hospital suspends services, all that and more after the break. Don't go away.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you find them. In the bazaars in Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo. Who comes to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt? Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where you can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
A dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
In the heart of Nairobi, which is
from everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures. We bring their voices to you.
This is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. French President Emmanuel Macron is in Kenya today, the latest stop on his Africa tour. His trip is focusing on investment and security in an increasingly strategic region. The French leader will also attend the UN Environment Assembly in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. He will co-chair the One Planet Summit with Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta. Macron's office says Kenya is the only African nation to reach the goal of making renewable energy 75% of its energy mix. Macron and Kenyatta are expected to discuss the ongoing extremist threat in the region as well as transport and economic projects.
Mr. President, your visit signals our shared commitment to foster our bilateral relations and engagement within the region in various ways which will deepen, expand, and strengthen our bonds of friendship and cooperation for the mutual benefit of our peoples.
We are deeply committed in working together with Kenya on different topics. First, security, counter-terrorism, and obviously the regional agenda. We discussed at length about the situation in the region. We worked very well together on the situation, but we want to improve the cooperation.
Yeah. Well, we are joined by CGTN's Robert Nagila for more. Robert, thank you for joining us here. Well, President Emmanuel Macron is here in Kenya for a two-day visit. He met with President Kenyatta. What is the purpose of his visit?
Well, thank you very much. I'd put it into two. First, you've got trade and investments, and the second part of it is security. Now, in terms of trade, France has always been a major trade partner in Kenya. However, over the last few years, we've not seen that much of involvement, especially in the major areas of construction and so on. So what we're seeing is a major comeback. Now, among the issues, trade issues that were discussed, for example, an assembly plant by French auto car maker Peugeot, which has been set up, and that will be assembling the Peugeot 308 and two other models which will be announced later this year. France is also will also build. Well, they've agreed they will finance and build a light rail system from Kenya's main airport, that is Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, which is about 30 kilometers from the capital city. So that line will link the airport to the city center. And there are a couple of other business meetings as well scheduled to take place later on tonight and tomorrow as well. So this is huge for Kenya. It's the first time we've had a French president visit the country since independence.
I was about to ask you that. What's the importance of that, not just for Kenya, but for France?
Well, this is very significant. The first thing that springs to mind is China. China is a very close trading partner, not just of Kenya, but across the entire continent. And there's a lot of analysts out there saying that, look, France, which is really involved in Western Africa mostly, for the better part of it, has been watching enviously at China's relations with much of Kenya. And Kenya considers China a very strong and strategic partner, and vice versa. So France wants to come into and get a share of the pie, so to speak. So that's why we're seeing a huge push by Macron into Kenya at this particular moment. And he said that, look, France wants to be a credible economic partner to Kenya. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing this huge push from France. It's accompanied by several business leaders from France as well. They'll be meeting business leaders here in Kenya as well and seeing what deals they can come up with and agree upon, what will be financed, what will be built in what particular areas of the economy, construction, financial, we're looking at marine as well, and of course technology transfer, which is a huge, huge thing. Now, just very quickly, one thing that Macron said is he wants to tap into President Uhuru Kenyatta's growth agenda. Now that there are 4 pillars here. You're talking about manufacturing, you're talking about affordable housing, you're talking about universal health care as well. So they're looking into to see how they can come in, where they can invest, and where they can partner with Kenya as well to try and realize this growth agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right, now when it's all said and done, Macron would have visited not one, not two, but 3 countries within the Horn of Africa. Can you tell us again, before I let you go, how important and strategic this region is for France?
Well, I'll take you back to the last time that the U.S. President, the former U.S. President Barack Obama was here as well, and he more or less did the same route as well, visiting Ethiopia and a few other countries across the continent. Now, part of this as well, the reason for this as well is China. China is a huge partner across the entire continent, not just in trade. We're talking about food security, we're talking about security itself, and in so many other spheres of life. And we've seen African countries embrace China because they consider China as an equal partner, something that they've been asking for from other traditional partners. And that's one of the reasons why we're seeing France now making this push. It is no mistake that he went to Djibouti. It's no mistake that he went to Ethiopia as well. And the French would also like to extend their sphere of influence across the eastern part of Africa. They're very influential in Western Africa, but not that much in Eastern Africa. So they'd like to use this as a gateway into sub-Saharan Africa.
Robert Nagila, as always, we appreciate your analysis. Over to Kenya. Staying in Kenya now, international delegates are meeting in Nairobi this week to discuss conservation at the UN Environment Assembly and at the One Planet Summit. March 21st has been designated as the International Day of Forest. The UN Economic Commission for Europe has started an initiative called Fashion for Forest. The project has discovered a valid alternative to traditional raw materials using discarded wood chips to make high-quality garments. Let's take a look at that story.
From the forest to the runway, these are the garments of the future. At a corner of the ongoing United Nations Environmental Assembly in Nairobi, the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe and its partners are showcasing a new concept. These clothes are made entirely from fabric made out of wood chips. The project is the culmination of many years of research by scientists who sought sustainable ways to produce quality textiles while conserving the environment.
How it works is that you take a tree from a certified forest, so it's sustainable wood fibers, and then it can be transported into those beautiful textiles to make fashion.
Fabrics vary in texture and quality depending on the chemicals used. Already a section of designers have taken up the challenge, designing versatile pieces from the fabrics. In time, scientists hope that textiles made in this way will be widely accepted across the world.
It doesn't always have to be synthetic, it doesn't always have to be polluting, and it doesn't have to be conventional cotton that requires a lot of pesticides. Like there's other ways of making clothes. The textile is a lot more environmentally friendly than the other alternatives that are currently taking the major parts of the textile market. So it uses 120 times less water than cotton.
However, the technology is only available in parts of Europe. Currently, the textiles make up only 1% of the fabrics used across the world. But the word is spreading, and its creators hope that one day they will dress the world in wood. Bulletin, CGTN, Nairobi.
Barely 24 hours ago, the UK Prime Minister revised Brexit deal was shot down yet again in the House of Commons, despite EU assurances that the UK will not remain indefinitely tied to it through the Irish backstop. At this point, we're 16 days away from the 29th of March, the day the UK formally leaves the EU. CGTN's Richard Bestick has the latest from London.
Defeated again, this time by 149 votes.
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391.
UK Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit deal resoundingly rejected by Parliament. The Prime Minister immediately outlined possible parliamentary paths ahead.
Does it want to hold a second referendum? Does it want to leave with a deal but not this deal? These are unenviable choices. But thanks to the decision that the House has made this evening, they are choices that must now be faced.
It was this man who ultimately proved to be May's harbinger of doom, Attorney General Geoffrey Cox. Despite a last-minute dash to Brussels in the hope of securing legally binding assurances, Cox told the government the legal risks remained unchanged. Theresa May's Brexit deal was on the ropes. Assuming over the coming days Parliament votes against a no-deal Brexit and in favour of moving the Brexit deadline, Mrs May could be in Brussels next week seeking a Brexit delay from the EU.
Brexit protesters remain in good voice, but the question politically is where to now for the UK. There's talk of a general election and possibly an end to Theresa May's premiership. Richard Bestick, CGTN, London.
Well, we are joined by CGTN's Richard Bestick for more on the story. Parliament votes tonight to determine whether the United Kingdom walks away from the EU. What is the latest, Richard Bestick?
Well, Richard, it is following on from that resounding defeat, a vote tonight on whether they take off the table the prospect of a no-deal Brexit. Now, you'd think that would be simple enough, wouldn't you? Parliamentarians, business and industry are all absolutely terrified of the economic consequences of that. It's not been so simple. We've been able to read into the developments during the day some intriguing ideas that suggest the way ahead. Theresa May, for example, her sore throat still in place, came to the House earlier and said she's standing by her deal. It's a good deal, she said, and it's the only deal on the table. Then the Chancellor of the Exchequer turned up to say that the risk involved of not rejecting no deal was to the economy, that it would be a substantial hit. Now that's being interpreted as him moving towards a compromise across the House, something that Theresa May has always been rejected. And what's intriguing about what Theresa May was saying is that she's allowed a free vote. Why? Well, she knows that there are a number of members of Parliament in there, hardline Brexiteers, who would be quite happy to vote against her and for a no-deal Brexit. So it's intriguing, but at the end of the day, as we count down now to a result in just an hour or so from now, it looks like they will vote against Brexit. Rather, they will vote against a no-deal Brexit, and then they can move on to the next stage. Richard.
Richard Bestick in London, thank you for your insights. We certainly appreciate your analysis. And it's right back to you, Rama Nyang in studio. You have your business headlines up next. Talk to us.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business. Africa's largest telco, MTN, will list its Nigerian subsidiary. Target is between April and May. And the AU is reiterating its commitment to setting up a continental free trade area.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start in the world of telecommunications, where the Joburg-based MNO, the mobile network operator MTN, expects its Nigeria unit to list on the Nigerian Securities Exchange somewhere between April and May. That at least is a target. Last week, the telecoms giant said it aimed to list the subsidiary without raising new money, at least not immediately from investors, by simplifying its capital structure prior to the listing. In 2018, MTN Nigeria increased its mobile subscriber base in Africa's most populous country by another 6 million people. Its total subscriber base over there is now 58 million. It accounts for roughly a third of the group's annual core profits, but it's proven to be a problematic market in recent years. The firm agreed to make a $53 million payment last year to resolve a dispute over the movement of $8 billion in dividends from the country over several years. That settlement ended a 4-month row that has battered its share price. Elsewhere, the African Union says it will ensure that regional integration, a continental free trade area, and other continental goals are achieved. The AU Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Victor Harrison, told CGTN's Girum Chala that member states must implement agreed-to plans and have to demonstrate strong political will if these common targets are to be attained.
This is a great meeting when a rich team transform productive transformation. How to accelerate the productive transformation? As main result, as main recommendation, infrastructure, to improve the infrastructure. If not, you cannot improve the trade intra-Africa. Okay, and you know the place of agriculture. Everyone recognizes the necessity to make effort to improve the agriculture. After the agriculture, the agro-industry. You need infrastructure, you need electricity, you need energy. But you need the capacity building.
Commissioner, discussions, as we've said, are ongoing, but I would like to understand What kind of recommendations you are suggesting member states to consider to achieve that final productive transformation across Africa?
A leadership and a will, a determination to define the priority and to make effort to achieve the vision. It's a political will with a determination. Look the example for Ethiopia. For Ethiopia has a vision, and Ethiopia has a determination to achieve this vision. It's necessary to mobilization, for mobilization of domestic resource. It's very important. The mobilization of domestic. You see, during this meeting, you have the participation of Association of African Central Bank, of participation of African Stock Exchange Association, that you give the opportunity to how to find the funds for the development. And it's necessary for me to continue the mobilization of domestic resources.
Now, the man widely regarded as the father, if you will, of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee, returned to his groundbreaking invention's birthplace. That's the CERN Physics Research Center outside Geneva, to mark the web's 30th anniversary on Tuesday. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with the details.
In March 1989, a British scientist submitted his first proposal for what would be revolutionary global technology. It was in the form of a memo with a complex design of arrows, boxes, circles, and bubbles. 30 years later, the World Wide Web remains imperfect, at least according to the inventor. Berners-Lee is now advocating for a contract for the web, composed of 9 principles that aims to change the web for the better.
50% of humanity is now using this web thing. So at that point as well, you've got to step back and look. And so what the Web Foundation has done is say, well, there's only 2 things to do. One is get the other half online as quickly as possible, of course, because it is becoming more and more unfair that they aren't. And the other is for the people who are online, whoops, the web is not the web we wanted in every respect.
Not to be confused with the Internet, which is the network of globally interconnected computers, the World Wide Web is how people share information on the Internet. In an open letter published, Berners-Lee said many people now felt unsure about whether the web was a force for good. But it would be defeatist and unimaginative to assume that it could not change for the better in the next 30 years.
It is practical. We don't need to get out of the house to shop. Considering our daily life nowadays, it's pretty practical.
I'm not very talented in doing some things, but I use the internet to obtain information, to read the news, to buy train tickets, if I'm adept enough to do so.
It is sure that it can be scary. Today, when we look through Google and see our past and our daily travels, it raises questions. It is scary. But at the same time, if we don't impose strict controls over the internet, then who would be in charge? According to which norms? This also raises questions.
While the internet itself already existed in 1989 in the form of large networks of connected computers, the British scientist's proposal is now credited as the first step toward the World Wide Web as we know it today. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
And finally, over in the United States, a man has pleaded guilty to charges of fraud in what is considered to be the largest fraud scheme in the country's college admissions history. Basically, he ran a $25 million scheme that enabled wealthy parents to secure admissions for their kids at elite universities since 2011. The man at the heart of this scandal, William Singer. He pleaded guilty to racketeering, conspiracy and 3 other counts in a case that has led to charges against 49 other people, celebrities included. The The founder of William Edge College in Korea network arranged apparently for fake testers to take college admissions exams and also bribed coaches to give admission slots meant to be reserved for recruited athletes. According to prosecutors, parents paid anywhere between $100,000 to as much as $2.5 million per child for these services, which were masked as contributions to some scam charity. Right, then I'll leave it there for the time being. A bit back at the top of the hour, the French president, as you just heard, Emmanuel Macron, he's on a visit to a few countries in East Africa. We'll be looking at what exactly France is trying to achieve in countries that, for a very long time, it's not really paid that much attention to. Details on that and plenty more coming your way at 1800 GMT. For now, though, back to Richard.
All right, you're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got a lot more news coming your way, including